Try not to fidget.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, jumping on the live stream tonight. We have heard two clips from the Zach Smith interview on SportsCenter on ESPN. So there is a long interview. ESPN, for certain reasons, is choosing to edit those down into particular segments and then releasing them throughout the hour of SportsCenter. And we've seen two. I think the first one focusing more on the process of the reporting and what Urban Meyer did with the information and Gene Smith. And then the second clip focused more on the relationship between Zach Smith and Courtney Smith. We are joined by Claire Crawford, who joins us on a regular basis to talk Ohio State football. And we have had much more joyful, happy, optimistic, light conversations in the past. But, life gets in the way. And people's actions get in the way, Claire. So, wow, we could take this down so many paths, but I'm going to leave it open to you to give us your unique thoughts on this incident or series of incidents and what we know to date and your thoughts about where we stand.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, as always. I will start with what I am not going to do today. I will not defend anyone. I was not in the relationship with Courtney and Zach. I'm not Urban Meyer. I'm not Shelly Meyer. And I don't know that any of us will know, possibly, what really happened between those two. I can tell you from my own personal experience, as a woman, having been involved in an abusive relationship, how difficult it is to be released from a cycle of abuse. It doesn't mean necessarily that any of that happened. There's this odd Venn diagram, right? I'm also not going to, I'm not going to shame anyone. I'm not going to judge anyone here today. I am not going to divulge more than I should. However, I can say personally that for a fact, it was an incredibly toxic relationship that I truly believe, in my opinion, that Urban did everything above board. And I'll tell you why. Urban came out with a statement today in a lot of transparency and in full disclosure of what he knew and when, and that he made a mistake during OSU Media Days in Chicago, explaining the situation. So this is my take. Obviously, Urban publicly has respect for women and has multiple times, there's a sign in the Woody Hayes that one of their credos is respect women. It's at the top of the list. I truly believe that he believes that, and I don't believe that he puts that above his program. I know Ohio State haters don't want to hear that. I know that they don't want to believe that. I know Urban Meyer haters don't want to believe that. And I truly want to believe that that's the case. Of course, it's going to put doubt into everyone's mind, whether he truly believes it. But what I want any doubter to ask themselves is if Urban was willing to bench a Carlos Hyde or remove a Briante Dunn from the team for any reason having to do, there's video evidence, right? If he is willing to do that with his starters, which I will arguably, I'll argue that is even more important than having an assistant coach on the sideline. For what reason would Urban be motivated if he did know these things to say, screw it, I'm going to keep him on the staff anyway? He is far too important, far more important than the chance that this might not be in either compliance with the law, in compliance with his morality, in compliance with his faith, and what his personal beliefs were, in compliance with the NCAA. That is the only thing that's saving me from thinking that Urban did not only his due diligence, but did everything in his power to really make sure that this was handled correctly. I'm sure he didn't want to expose Zach and Courtney's relationship or business. However, if anyone wanted to see any of this information, much of it is public and has been since 2009. Obviously, it's not something that many people like to talk about. And I understand that I'm rambling now, and I'm sure I'm getting a lot of questions on the live chat. However, I'm almost done. Again, from personal experience, being on the side of being a victim and being in abusive relationships, people are often uncomfortable. It is difficult to get people to believe you. The system is broken. The system is broken to get protective orders. The system is broken in order to get criminal protective orders. The system is broken with divorce. The system is broken with police. They can only do so much. And unfortunately, because of the nature of the toxic relationship, which again, I firsthand experienced, and I think that's all I'll say about that, it is extremely plausible that she may have cried wolf 9 times, but there could be a 10th time that she didn't.
Yeah, so I want to give you most of the time. You only have about 4 minutes left. So, I'm not as astute with this as maybe I should be. Fortunately, because I haven't been involved in those relationships, I haven't been around those kind of relationships.
Thank goodness.
Based on friends and family and things being at least good from that standpoint. I also work in a corporate environment that is almost the opposite of a boys' club in regards to making sure that everything is above board and everything is people are respected, and these kind of issues are taken very seriously. So that's, I think, where I'm going to start here real quick, is that if anything, when these situations are brought to light or reports are made or incidents are brought to light, I think that we need to take the potential victims' stance as grave as possible and make it as severe as possible and take it as seriously as possible, and then work back from there.
Back down. Yep.
That doesn't mean we accuse the other individual and hold them to public scrutiny, but that means that we take the claim as seriously as possible, and then we peel back from there. It's what we need to do. So I hate hearing that in this culture, in this environment, and I get that's that part of the public perception of it, but in terms of doing what's right, that should have never been a question or should have changed throughout time in terms of protecting people.
Well, in reality, when we say protecting people, the law is also there to protect everyone. So the law is also there to protect Zach Smith from being wrongly accused. And there is, I've learned a lot, unfortunately, in this process. And the law is here, and there's a certain amount that the law will allow. And if, the cycle of abuse is, just below this line, unfortunately, the law can only do so much. And it is, again, that line is drawn to not only protect victims, but to protect people who have also been wrongly accused. I am not claiming that Zach was wrongly accused, and I'm also not claiming that I know for sure that Courtney was abused. I will always be an advocate for victims and specifically for women, and not only from personal experience, but just because I think it is my duty as a strong woman to stand up for those who don't have a voice.
As you mentioned, Claire, even the most severe enemy of Ohio State football, or Urban Meyer, would have to admit, if you look at the way he handles the program at Ohio State versus what was done at Florida, I think he learned from that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's any question the standard that he's held is student athletes, and even before they are proven guilty of anything, the measures that have been taken for the last 6 to 7 years during the program under Urban Meyer has been above board and taking these type of situations as severe as possible. Now, if Urban Meyer, and I will say one thing about his communication style, even when it involves football, I sometimes there are missing words and he uses phrases that lose me all the time. So I think I'm going to conjecture here that the approach was, and I don't want to deal with this. I didn't know where this was coming from, and I'm just avoiding this, and I'm not going to speak to it. And we took care of it, and that's the end of it. He speaks about football, and I sometimes don't. So I don't want to waste what little bit of time we have, but we'll give you your 30 seconds or whatever you need to do here, Claire, to let us know what you think about anything going forward.
Sure. So, I think that, like you said, with Urban, he can play very careful and close to his chest. I know, of all people, Tressel was accused of being a politician, but I think Urban as well has been a politician in his career. And I think that it is not only is it a delicate situation in general, abuse is very difficult to talk about, and especially if it's someone that you care about. Obviously Urban is been a part of the Bruce family and was an assistant under Earl Bruce, and Zach played for Urban at BG, and this is not just some random assistant. And even if he was, Urban would consider him part of the family, and that goes for Courtney and their family as well. I'm sure this was taken seriously. I can't even begin to wrap my head around. And again, it's only going to be taking as that I'm embracing OSU here. But what I want to do is just embrace the facts that we know, embrace my own personal experience, and know that if someone does come to you and mentions that they have been abused, it's extremely important not to assume that they're being dramatic, no matter how dramatic and crazy they are. It's important for you to assume that at that point that it might be true and that the law enforcement needs to be involved. So the law enforcement has been involved in both Gainesville and here in Ohio. And we have to, again, only assume that things were handled above board and that there was no reason for Urban to have somehow, saved Zach Smith's job over his team or his career.
Yeah, the motivation makes absolutely no sense other than loyalty to the Earl Bruce legacy and lineage. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me, and it seems to be like unreasonable to take it to that extent if that's the case. Claire Crawford, Buckeye Claire on Twitter. Please join her there. Claire, unfortunately, I think we'll have to deal with this situation through a number of conversations coming up in the next few weeks, but we'll weave some football into it, and gradually we'll get to 100% football and 0% this. It may take several months, but we will get there. And the Scarlet and Gray will be on the field September 1st, regardless.
I'm extremely happy about all of those things. Thank you again for having me on. I totally appreciate you letting me at least soapbox for a second.
Claire, I thought you would bring an articulate perspective and a very meaningful and heartfelt perspective, but you even exceeded expectations as you typically do. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being a supporter of my work on Facebook and elsewhere. So thank you so much for that. And we will talk up the Buckeyes here very soon.
Thank you.
All right, Claire, have a good night.
You too.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And we appreciate Claire's perspective. And I will run through the live chat right now and answer as many questions or respond to as many comments as I can possibly get to here. And whether they deal with this particular situation or the entirety of college football, because you guys know what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the LSU Miami game or the Notre Dame Michigan game, or if Shea Patterson's going to live up to expectations or whatever the situation is. But this is just too important. It's to the hilt of importance when it comes to just football. We're talking about one of the 5 most successful coaches in the history of college football. but obviously it goes way beyond that in regards to the severity of possible violations, whether it be legally or morally or against the code of the university and of just humanity in and of itself. So let's get to the live chat, and I will work through it with all of you. I appreciate you guys joining the live stream tonight. We had originally scheduled this for 6:30. Claire and I wanted to take in as much of the Zach Smith interview as possible and then address it. I've got it on DVR. Maybe I'll talk more to it myself later tonight. So let's see what we have from all of you fine folks. George on the line, talking other things, making predictions on football games. Gators. Coach Smith doesn't look too believable on the clip I saw. That's according to William Lee. I really hate to conjecture there. Many people do. William, you certainly have the right to do that. I hate to look at people's facial expressions, and some people get extremely emotional. Some people are more poised and plastic. I don't try to judge all that. I don't try to think that if somebody's crying after a severe situation or after the loss of a loved one, that person cared about the situation or about that person. If they don't cry, they must not have cared for that person. I think we will all react differently. And some people, you could interview them on national television or international television, in this case, about anything, and they would break down. So certainly, William, I understand. You can read emotions and thoughtfulness and supposed care for a situation or genuine authenticity, but I just won't do that myself. Shane, is this going to happen or am I too late? Shane, again, I explained the situation with us not knowing at the time. I didn't know. Claire actually clued me into the Zach Smith interviews being shown on ESPN. I didn't know. Otherwise, I would have been running head to head with Zach Smith, and I'm guessing he would have won in this case. Moore broke a couple hours ago. ZS pointed the finger directly at the AD, meaning Zach Smith pointed the finger directly at the AD, not Urban. Yeah. Urban with a written statement denies it all again. And the point I was trying to make about Urban Meyer's communication style, watch him during any news conference. And I'm not speaking to, I know Claire was talking about him being a politician. And yes, Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, on down the line, especially older style, old school football coaches, they won't even let you know who's winning the guard position with 3 weeks left in the fall camp before the opener, let alone talk about this kind of stuff. I wasn't necessarily speaking to that. I was just talking about his communication style and his communication ability. Obviously, the guy's a master communicator because you have to be as a successful football coach. But behind a podium, just watch his news conferences. He leaves out words. He's a type communicator like Jim Tressel was, similar to that. He doesn't explain things in full sentences, not anything in full sentences. So you hear like a word, pay attention to it the next time you hear Urban Meyer, and other coaches do this as well. Just people do this. He doesn't explain things in full sentences. So you got to kind of translate. Okay, he said that. He said 3 words here. Then he's talking about, there's a lot of pronouns worked in there, and you got to figure out, oh, he's talking about this. All right. Gene Smith, yes, a major player in this. If Urban Meyer is telling the truth about moving this information and the reporting of this situation and the incidents or incident to Gene Smith, because basically we're talking about 2015. 2009 was at Florida. It was dealt with in whatever manner. 2017 was the protection order violation that was dealt with, that eventually led to the firing of Zach Smith. The 2015 situation is the one that's paramount here. The end of season 2015, just think about this. Ohio State was gunning for a Big Ten championship, in a college football playoff appearance. They were the consensus number one until the Michigan State loss in November of 2015. They were the number one team, the national champions, and this is all going on at the same time. Not excusing anything. That has nothing to do with what should be dealt with. I'm just laying it out in context, what was going on with the coaching staff and the football program and the team at the time. All right, as Too Bad 28 mentions there, yes, Gene Smith could be the fall guy. Either rightfully so, hopefully, if that's the case, or not rightfully so, if that's the case. Coconut Cane, clean house, OSU dirty all around. William Lee, he did keep him on staff. Yes, he did. So according to Urban Meyer, he heard from the reports, the investigation was completed, and so he had that information, which was the other side of the story, and then he also had the face-to-face with Zach Smith to say, what's going on here? And who knows if that was a 30-second conversation or a 3-hour conversation. We don't know. We don't know how much due diligence Urban Meyer did in that conversation with Zach Smith. Chris Harris, yes, Claire does a great job, comes on here, talks Ohio State football. So she leaves it on her sleeve that she is Ohio State through and through, and has had a podcast in the past with Joe Dexter from the Ozone. So she loves Ohio State football. She's very close, as she alluded to, and I won't go into details. She is very close to the situation at Ohio State. She knows a ton of the people involved in this matter and others. So she personally knows these people. Angelica, thank you for joining Mark Rogers TV. Angelica, I don't know how long you've been watching, but thanks and welcome aboard. And I will get to your comment. Exactly. Number one ND fan. That's what we were alluding to with Zeke Elliott, Carlos Hyde, Briante Dunn, and there have been a few others that were suspended based on allegations, based on charges that weren't proven at that point, but Urban Meyer chose to put them on the sideline to see the process play out and then reinstate them or enact the discipline and punishment. Angelica, if Urban sticks to his comment at Big Ten Media Days of not knowing, is it possible that his wife could have known, and because it can't be proven whether he knew or not, that he could keep his job? Yes, we talked about this many times. So, Angelica, we did have two very long discussions. One, just me striking up the live stream as soon as this was made known, and then the second with Steve Hellwagon from 247 Sports Bucknuts. We discussed this. So that's the smoking gun, or at least at the time was the smoking gun, was that Urban Meyer said, I don't know anything about this. Don't know anything about 2015. And Brett McMurphy, who uncovered the story, had the text messages between Courtney Smith and Shelley Meyer to say, well, Shelley Meyer knew about it. Why wouldn't Urban Meyer know about it? But there was comments made in there that made it very, certainly didn't confirm. And even Courtney Smith said in a recent interview just in the last couple of days that she didn't think that Shelley Meyer told Urban, even though she said she probably would. And then she asked her if she did, and she said, I haven't. And that's all we knew there. I would think part of this investigation would be similar to the finding and tracking of the Courtney Smith and Shelley Meyer text messages would be Urban Meyer text messages. He's a public employee. He's an employee of the university. All that should be on record. Everyone is hoping for Ohio State's worst, praying for our downfall. Jay, this is the first time I've seen you on Mark Rogers TV, so welcome. For those of you who are joining us that don't typically comment, and maybe you've commented and I've missed it, I would love to know when you started watching, and would love to know who you're a fan of and all that sort of thing. So let me know. Number one ND fan, he released a statement saying he knew and reported the issue, I believe. Yes, he did. So you can obviously see that online. I've read it. I was going to read the whole thing, but it basically just says, hey, I didn't handle the situation at Big Ten Media Days well. I thought this issue was behind us. We fired him. I reported it. The records will show that. And when it comes down to it, the police records should show, and internal documents within the university's athletic program and above should show that Urban Meyer made these statements and turned over this incident. It should, unless it's just a phone call to Gene Smith, although that's going to be on record as well, just a conversation to say, hey, this is what I'm hearing. This is what's been told to me by my wife. Take this on. Take it from here. All right. Yeah, people are going to be blinded by their fanhood. No question about that. As number one ND fan, to varying degrees. Angelica, I'm a Michigan fan, but I don't want to see Urban go down this way. Williams states it there as well about the AD, Gene Smith, possibly taking the hit for this one. As Navy Thomas 8 points out, and Zach Smith alluded to this a number of times. And again, the first clip of the interview dealt with Urban Meyer's defense and the process of what happens when these type of issues or incidents are made known. That it's turned over to the police, it's turned over to the investigators, and they conduct the investigation. So there's an issue if the female in question is afraid to do that, and then other people find out and don't do anything about it. But in this case, the police knew about it. They underwent an investigation. So that's where I can agree with Navy Thomas 8 for sure. Chris Harris, so with Urban's statement he just released, Mark, he said he knew about the 2015 incident and that he followed protocol. Zach Smith said on radio today that Gene Smith called him. Zach Smith said on radio today that Gene Smith called him, meaning Gene Smith called Zach Smith to discuss the matter. And if that's the case, then that really takes Urban Meyer off the hook. If Gene Smith was dealing with this as the AD, which he should, more so than the head football coach, it being not a football matter. All right. What else do we have here? I have unfortunately lost, this happens many times when I run through the live stream, is that I lose where I am. All right. 2 coaches from OSU kicked out in a row. Can't run that program without something happening. Maybe we can have a postmortem on Jim Tressel at another time. A lot to be stated there, of which I've said in bits and pieces throughout the years and probably stated at the time. I'm sure I did. I had this channel going with about 13 people watching at the time. So I'm sure I said something. I know I said something about Jim Tressel. So that's just a different deal. The only correlation is cover up. Knowing something was wrong, knowing something was violated, whether it be an NCAA rule that was really a stupid rule. Regardless, though, those are the rules versus we're talking about domestic violence. But the cover up is the correlation, the possible cover up correlation. All right. LSU suspended a starting offensive lineman today. William, we'll have to do a video about that. We'll do like a 5-hour live stream on the LSU offensive lineman suspended today. What was that all about? I'll have to look into that. All right. Angelica with another question I have. Is there any chance anyone else on the staff might be in trouble? Oh, you betcha. So we have verification from Courtney Smith that she also was talking to other coaches' wives on the staff. So they had knowledge. Would they talk to their husbands? You would think. There you go. Urban said today he knew of the allegations. Zach was on radio. Okay, got that. Pointing the finger at the AD. Yes. Zach trying to save Urban. Urban, yes. Maybe even, okay. Okay, Mark, I told you Urban Meyer wasn't gone more 50-50. I think it's really 50-50 right now. Out of the gate, within the first few hours, I thought it was 50-50. And then when more came out about the verification of 2015 and the denial and all that, I thought, well, this is more like 90-10 against him. And I think I'm back to 50-50. Urban Meyer's just foolishly buying time if he's making claims in that statement that aren't true. This isn't 1950. We have documentation and paper trails on just, I don't want to say everything, but that close to everything. So that would be foolish of Urban Meyer to do that, to make claims that aren't going to be proven. But he made the claim. I followed protocol. I put this incident and the reporting of it in the proper hands. The investigation was done. It was brought back to me. I questioned Zach Smith as one of my coaches. I did all the things that I should have done. Maybe I didn't do them well. I could have done better. I could have certainly done better in approaching this at Big Ten Media Days in terms of showing more compassion toward these type of situations and potential victims. According to Zach Smith, not a victim. But, Mark, I hear the teams are poaching OSU verbal commits. It will be like vultures picking meat off a carcass. Absolutely. Clemson alum 98. You're talking about what is always one of the top 3 to 5 recruiting classes in the nation. And even if Urban Meyer is exonerated, this has to hurt recruiting in the interim. Penn State showing us that it's not going to hurt in the long term. That they worked through it pretty quickly, and the Penn State football program at the time was nowhere close to Ohio State status. But you are right. Yes, the other programs are going to be going after these guys to the hilt. Possible candidates. I think that's a topic for another time, and we can do that certainly even before Urban Meyer's fate is finalized and announced. But as Navy Thomas 8 points out, Bob Stoops' name is all over the place. Matt Campbell is kind of that up-and-comer guy. Bo Pelini, Ohio State, do not hire Bo Pelini as the head coach. He didn't do a horrible job at Nebraska. He did not do a great job at Nebraska. He did a decent job at Nebraska, but he is not the guy that you want as the face of a program at that level. Bo Pelini at Ohio State. Do not think that's going to happen. Clemson, the center from Georgia, and the offensive guard from West Virginia are 2 good offensive linemen. Okay, any other names? Pelini's coaching at Youngstown State last I heard, but I don't know that he's still there, Angelica. Thals Howard says Urban Meyer will not get fired. I've seen some shady stuff at that place. All right. Too bad 28, hoping Bob Stoops does not tarnish his Oklahoma brand and nothing else with going anywhere. But, of course, Bob Stoops has ties to Ohio. That's where he grew up. He did go on to play football at Iowa. All right, Angelica, I didn't know Pelini was hired there. Thanks for the info. Okay, anything else? Anything else from you guys? Les Miles at Ohio State. Yeah, I really don't think the Buckeyes, unless it would be somebody at the very, very top of his game, is going to go the old school route. I don't know anybody else out there. You know, the last coaching search with Jim Tressel having been removed from the position, of course, centered around John Gruden, but he's been, of course, snatched up by the Oakland Raiders. So it's not going to be Gruden this time, but he was the number 1 candidate in a lot of fans' minds. And people are mentioning Lane Kiffin. Do you want Lane Kiffin running your football program at that level? Well, he's done it twice. Tennessee, USC, it didn't necessarily turn out extremely well at either one of those places. All right. Bo Pelini would pull a Woody Hayes and punch a player from the other team. or a ref. And Navy Thomas 8 would know that as well as any of us watching Nebraska football. Brian Kelly, a lot of love, and I say that sarcastically, for Brian Kelly on the live chat, not just tonight, but I see this on a regular basis. Brian Kelly is just not typically a likable guy by most people, even when he's winning at Notre Dame. A lot of people, Brian Kelly just has not conducted himself in the best light possible in public settings, whether it be on the sideline or behind a podium or in an interview setting. And then he's his own worst enemy, having committed some possible, he's made some questionable decisions that he doesn't completely get connected to, but don't put him in the best light. And then he just doesn't present himself in the best way. But the guy's doing something right. Won 10 games last year. They're going to have a really good team, and we will preview their schedule very soon here at Mark Rogers TV. So we're just about to wrap this up and let you know that schedule rankings are coming your way. This is something in the future we're going to do right after the previous football season, because that's the best time to analyze the schedules. That's when we're really looking at, okay, previewing the next season and what do these teams have to face. So I apologize for not doing the schedule rankings sooner. Those should have been done. But as soon as we finish the series, and it's going to be done, these videos are going to come out, and they're only 2 to 3 minutes long. So you can just pound through these schedules and our look at the schedules, and we let you know where the tough spots are, how well these programs are scheduling, and what should be the approach on scheduling. And we go through the whole thing in a very succinct manner of 2 to 3 minutes. And we're ranking the schedule 70 all the way up to number 1. As soon as we get done with that, I could show you notepads full of information. I am breaking down personnel on every Power 5 team. I'm going to bring you previews and predictions on all the teams, and hopefully get that done just a couple days before the opening of the season, and give you conference previews. And on top of that, we started today with our fall camp reports. So as soon as news breaks in the various camps across the nation, in the Power 5, the Group of 5, or wherever else with the major independents, we will bring you the information, the insight, and the reports from the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation. That started today with Dan Rubin from Boston College. Eagles Unlimited does a great job. Haven't talked to Dan in so long. We had a tremendous, very fun discussion, very insightful discussion, but also a fun discussion on Boston College football today at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Please check that out. And again, we've got all sorts of teams lined up for next week, and then come my previews and predictions as well. Mike Riley available? Yes. Mike Riley's done as a head coach at a place. He reached the pinnacle at Nebraska, could not handle the job. It's all downhill from that standpoint for Mike Riley, but he's being compensated rather nicely and in a very comfy and secure non-pressure situation there at Oregon State as assistant coach and mentor. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Too bad 28. And not that he'd listen, but if Ohio State wanted to shake up the college football world post Meyer, its first call would be to Pete Carroll. Yes, Pete Carroll, with ties to Ohio State, coached on the same staff that Urban Meyer was a graduate assistant on under Earl Bruce. Wouldn't that be something? Pete Carroll, one of the greatest coaches in the history of college football. The statistics won't necessarily bear that out because he wasn't at USC long enough. But of course, then his legacy carries on with what he's doing with the Seattle Seahawks and winning year after year after year after year. And aside from letting Russell Wilson throw the ball, Marshawn Lynch keeping the ball out of his hands, he could have 2 Super Bowl championships. The next live, I don't know when that's going to be, Angelica, but stay tuned. Starting next week and certainly throughout the remainder of the summer leading up to opening day, we will be with you live on Sundays at 4 Eastern, Mondays at 6. Then we've got Wednesday and Thursday night at 7. That's the bare minimum. And then when things break or I just feel like talking college football, then we strike up the live stream. But most of my time for Mark Rogers TV going to be devoted toward these previews and predictions going forward. Appreciate all of you. And remember, if you want to be part of the mailing list that's going to go out starting week 1 of the college football season, and we're not going to do anything with your email address, you're going to have mine as well. So that's a fair trade. In addition to that, no garbage mail. You're not going to hear from me every 3 hours. It's going to be one time per week. Leave me your email. Don't do it on the live chat. I may lose track of it. Send me your email, and you can send it in commenting to any of the videos or directly to MarkRogersTV, MarkRogersTV at Gmail, and just leave your name and your email address. And starting in week 1, we're just going to provide a quick little recap newsletter, whatever's on my mind for that particular week pertaining to the game we love, college football. All right, everyone, like, comment, and subscribe. Angelica, it was great to hear from you for the first time, and a few other people that I have yet to see on the previous live chats. And of course, I would love to hear your take on college football and when you started watching the voice of college football here. And that voice is mine, it's yours, and it's the guests and contributors that I have on a regular basis. So please join us as we get you set like no one other for 2018. Like, comment, and subscribe, and tell your family and friends about Mark Rogers TV as well. I appreciate the support. You guys are the best. I will see you soon, and love the college football talk, and we are just 4 weeks away, so we will see you soon.